Would you like to lead off?
Yes, thank you. And I'm going to maybe go into a little more detail because we've had some newer school board members that maybe have not been through the approval of an alternative procurement process. So I'll just try to highlight for you the differences. You know, we're all pretty much used to doing what they call a design bid build. And that is where we ask an architect or an engineering firm to go out and to design a building. Then that's called the design phase. And then we ask for bids. And generally speaking, we take the low bid and then they go build it. Design, bid, build. Makes sense. This CMGC process is what they call an alternative form of procurement. And it is an exemption to what they call competitive, but it is a competitive process. It lends itself most especially to our seismic projects, because before, like with the Hugh Crest bathroom, we said, here's what we want you to build. What are you going to charge us? With the seismic grants, we usually have a set amount that we can spend on the seismic construction. It's limited by the grant. So we may have $2 million to do a seismic renovation. So everybody that submits a proposal is going to build it for $2 million. So we want to know, what are your qualifications? What is your experience to do this project? So that's when we do, I need your approval to do the CMGC form of alternative procurement. That's what's in statute. There are findings in your packet that have been reviewed by district's legal counsel to say that this does not inhibit competition. So it is competitive. And if you've got a lot of experience under your belt doing these, a lot of experience working for school districts, governments, seismic renovations, which is kind of a specialty thing, then please submit a proposal and we'll have a group of district employees. Board members are welcome. We've invited them in the past. And we sit and we go through the proposals and we rate them. How many years of experience do you have? What kind of references do you have? You know, what kind of projects have you done and for what size? So that's where we come up with the CMGC form of procurement. It allows us to bring on our construction firm early in the design process. I was asked earlier a question. So what happens if all the contractors say, you know, well, I can't build this building for anything less than, or seismic rehab it for anything less than, say, $3 million. Then we would ask them, you know, you can't, I mean, we'd say, please don't submit a proposal because what we have is the $2 million. But you bring on your contractor early in the design process and they do what they call value engineering. And they say, maybe you don't need the steel moment frames. Maybe you could do an FRP wrapped, you know, pressure treated stud in its place. All of that is approved by our engineers for seismic strength and stability. So you value engineer it to get your seismic work down into the $2 million that we have to do the project. Now, the district has many times said, well, so the $2 million is for seismic, but there are several things that we should do while we're there anyway. We know the floor needs to be replaced. We know that the roof needs to be replaced. And then the district may choose to spend some of our own construction funds to do those projects that just make sense. If those projects can be paid for within the scope of the seismic, and you know, if there's enough money, we can certainly do that. Oftentimes, most of the seismic grant money is taken up with the actual construction and the strengthening of the building. So I guess I could entertain questions from anybody.
Quick question. This one is for 2.5, right?
Correct.
Who determined that, when we went after the grant, who determined that? Who determined 2.5? Because again, it could be a 1.5
It could.
bill. Somebody did some engineering or did some evaluation. How did that
Correct.
process work?
So first, I'll tell you, until the last few years, the maximum a seismic rehabilitation grant could be would be 1.5. When we did Green Elementary, it was 1.5, and the buildings were enhanced to life safety standards. In other words, if an event happens while people are in the building, we want the building to stand or perhaps fall outward and leaving the roof so people could escape the building. Some years ago, they increased the maximum amount to 2.5 million. And now they want us to enhance it not only to life safety, but to immediate occupancy. And their focus has been on those spaces that really could be used as an emergency shelter after an event. So that is what Fremont was our first one that we did. And it was a $2.5 million grant. And we enhanced it to both life safety and immediate occupancy. We've also, we're doing Joe Lane right now, and that was a 1.2. So the process of getting these grants, we hire a firm. And in fact, recently we were awarded another $25,000 from ODE to do the assessment necessary to apply for a seismic grant. And so now we have a list of the next 3 projects. We've asked ZCS Engineering to come and do those assessments for us. And they do the drawings and engineering necessary to apply for a grant. Then the district fills in with a bunch of information about occupancy, how many people are in the building at any one time, what hours of the day, and other information that then gets sent to the Business Oregon people who manage these state grants. So the engineering firm, if it's, I mean, they will cover an area of the building that can be contained within the max grant. So they won't say you could do all of Joe Lane for 2.5. They'll say you could do 1 classroom wing and a gymnasium for 2.5. That answer it? Yeah.
Well, I don't, I don't quite understand all the details, but I have to see all the plans. I don't. I trust that you've done your homework. It looks like you have done your homework.
I can take you a tour of Joe Lane tomorrow. if you'd like.
No.
Okay,
Thanks.
so Cheryl, did you
Let me
get,
just close
okay,
here.
so, we will close the hearing in just a second. We do have, so if anybody from the public that wants to speak on this topic, either online or in person, this is the time to do it. And since this basically is a work session tonight, and we wanted to get a couple things done, so we didn't have to have another meeting next week, there won't be public participation tonight. It's just this section of the thing. So nobody wishes to speak, then we're going to close the hearing and we will move into a short regular board meeting. I would like to remind everybody that this meeting, as long as concerning all of our school board meetings, are recorded and will be probably tomorrow, I'm assuming, will be on the website. And they're archived there. They go back several years, I think. So you can kind of see where some of us have aged or whatever. But, so I just wanted you to know that. So Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Hammerson, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the online folks and the folks who are in person. It's nice to see the principals and vice principals here. I think you're going to be at most of our board meetings this year, so I think it's important. And we're glad that you're here. And of course, everybody else. Jared, review agenda and communications to the board.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Cotton. We do have a few folks not with us tonight. One excused, Director Shortcliffe, who is excused tonight, Assistant Superintendent Nee, and also tonight, your board secretary and our executive assistant, Janet Kitchell, is also excused for this evening. Since it's a publication, we have just one change quickly added to the agenda. You'll find that in the HR memo. We have hired an additional hire, our drama teacher at RHS. That's been added in red in your packet. Other than that, the agenda is consistent with what was last printed and distributed to the board. Thank you.
So we will need motion and a second for consent agenda. Right.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second. We have a motion and a second discussion. Okay, call for the vote. Keep your hands up highest for the count. All in favor? Opposed? So we're gonna move into action items and discussion items. So Cheryl?
There's a couple things that I'm gonna add, back to the competitive nature of a CMGC process. We do put the proposals out on what they call Oregon Buys. It is a state procurement website. All contractors, but it's a bid on public air contracts, have access to this at no fee. And in fact, they're notified if they sign up and they say I'm a general contractor and an electrician, they can be notified of any that is both general contractor and electrician. And then if they're interested, then they can go down, download all the documents, download the request for proposal. Also, all plan centers across the state, as far as I know, but I know that the local one does. They also download those opportunities. So if our contractors and contractors not comfortable with doing it online, they can go down to the local plan center and get the same information. So everybody has that. And then I was asked tonight about the contractor that we've been using for our seismic projects. Remember that oftentimes we get 5 to 7 people show up for the mandatory pre-bid conference, and we usually end up getting 1 or 2 proposals back. I think it's just because of the nature of the seismic rehabilitation, and the last few seismic contracts have gone to a company called SMB James. We've been very, very successful with that partnership. They've done a really nice job for us. SMB James is out of White City, but they now have a storefront here in Roseburg, and they have several employees who live here locally because they're doing more than just power work. They're actually the navigation center and several other projects in town. And because I'm asked frequently about what about local contractors, especially when we use an out of town general contractor, I've typed up to the board and anybody that's interested a list of local companies that have been used in our recent construction projects. And you'll see I've got SMB James here and all the places that they've, got a lot of materials from or have used local contractors. I did that for our softball, what we're doing for our district fencing, the secure entries for RHS Winchester, Eastwood, and Fir Grove that are under contract with H3 general contractors right now, and both the Fremont and Joe Lane seismic projects. We've also awarded SMB James the seismic CMGC contract for Eastwood Elementary School, which will happen in 2020. That's all I have to add for you.
We'll need a motion. And a second, and then we're gonna have discussion. Don't be afraid.
I move to approve the proposed findings supporting an exemption from competitive bidding requirements and the use of CMGC method of procurement for the Winchester Elementary School seismic renovation.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion? I think this is, thank you for doing this. I think, because we do get asked, and I think this is something that the media should pick up. Or give, there's a lot of local folks on that. And Cheryl, I've asked this before and I know it's in here. So with our recent grants, seismic grants, how much has this district received over the past, I don't know.
Probably the past about less than 20 years,
Yeah.
about $17 million have been brought into the community and done in seismic work.
A lot of money. Any other questions? Okay, call for the motion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you, Cheryl. Nice job. Okay, so you're up again.
So the next one is approval. So using a traditional design bid build method of procurement, we have quotes back for the restroom facilities at Hillcrest Elementary School. And at your places, I added a drawing so you guys can see just what we're going to get for our price. And we received 2 bids, one from H3 General Contractors and another from SMB James Construction. And the H3 General Contractors was the apparent qualified low bidder for $668,655.
Okay, so we'll need a motion in a second before we have discussion.
What was the difference?
I can tell you in a second. I think you're supposed to have a motion in a second.
You
and
want-
then
Why
can
don't you
ask
do
the
it? You want to make the motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or a motion for,
I was
Uh,
gonna, I can make
approve
it for you if you want a second.
okay, so Make a motion to consider approval for the contract for the bathroom services.
Yeah.
At Hillcrest Elementary.
Perfect.
Second.
And we have a second. Now discussion. You're on.
I can tell you what the difference is. There's also a memo in your packet for me that also says the differences between the two. And S&B James construction was 783, 978, as opposed to the one from H3 General Contractors for 668, 655.
Cheryl, so we are using S and B for our other projects.
Currently, at this time, we have S&B James Construction doing the Joe Lane seismic, and that is happening right now. They're getting to the end of it. And we also have them as our contractor for the Eastwood seismic project, which will happen next summer.
Okay,
We are using H3 for our phase 1 secure vestibules. That's the four I referenced earlier. And that's the one we were recommending for the
For
UCAS
this one.
bathroom.
Any other discussion? So could one of the administrators or you or whoever talk to us why this is going on, why we need this at Hillcrest?
Well, I can say why. When we talked about this project a month ago, I did hand out aerial map of the area showing that all the bathrooms at Hillcrest are located right along the front, right along Klein. Staff bathroom, kiddo bathrooms. And as you know, the school is shaped like a big E. And so we have classrooms all of the legs of the E. Plus, we have additional classroom facilities out back and some modulars. So currently, if somebody needs to use the facilities, they leave the modular, they walk across a park area, they go into the very bottom or the top of the E and walk all the way down. And it's very hard to do sometimes when you have a limited break time in between, your classes and, little kids. How do you get the kids all the way down there by themselves? Very young. Additionally, we are placing our DLC classroom out in one of those buildings that does not have facilities, and the new emerging K classroom. So that also is going to increase the need for bathroom facilities in the proximity. You'll know the playground facilities are all located in the back of Hillcrest Elementary, and so there is no facilities for kids to use while they're out on recess unless they go back across the playground, across the parking lot, into the top of the E and all the way down the hall.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll just mention too, I mean, as we're going to talk a little bit tonight about our strategic plan, but as we audit our current facilities with the lens of our strategic plan, and we think about, are our buildings safe? Do they have spaces that are inclusive for kids? Particularly our kids that are most vulnerable. We have a group of kids there that need assistance and support when they use the bathroom. And we're excited at what those programs will do to help support students, but the facilities just don't match the need. And so really it'll be a community asset, really. But this comes as a result of taking a look to say, are we living up to the expectation of the strategic plan that the board has for us? And so as we take a look at that in the context of what can we do to help support those board goals, that's really where this came out of.
I'll also just say we're going to use our ESSER funding, our COVID funding for this project. It's very appropriate for that because hand washing decreases the spread of disease.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? If not, call for the motion. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, Jared.
Okay, gosh, I feel like Cheryl should take this. I don't know. Cheryl, another one here? Get your
She's-
quota tonight. All right.
She's taking enough.
All right. Okay, so in your packet, page 28 and 29 of your packet, you will find our proposed student fees for this 23-24 school year. The process of approving these student fees is a function of the board, and the timing on this is important as we get ready to start the school year. And this is information we share with parents on what the fees are. It goes without saying that inflation, school districts are not immune to inflation. We've seen increasing costs in everything we do. We run a critical business in our community of helping children, but we're not immune to inflation costs and food, diesel and gas, electricity, all those things are certainly things that we feel as we budget and the reality of that. That being said, what you'll notice, probably most importantly, is that there are virtually no changes for parents and students in our proposed fee schedule. And again, that goes back to our expectation, I think the board's expectation and my expectation as superintendent, to make sure our families have a spot they can go that meets the needs of our current reality, and trying to keep those costs low for kids to participate and be part of the educational process without the barrier oftentimes of fees that we see. We try our best to keep those down. So the consideration for you tonight is to consider and take action on this fee schedule. You'll see on page 28 and 29. I will notice that there are no increases in fees with two exceptions. The first one is actually relative to the annual yearbook, where there is a slight change in that fee, not in the yearbook itself, but in there's a $5 increase in folks who decide to order late, is those changes are essentially being passed on by the vendor. And the only other change you'll notice in red is around driver's ed at the high school. Driver's ed is not a requirement, but it has become a community asset to help our students be safe and learn how to be good drivers. And you probably see our high school students driving around, our instructors driving around. Over the course of the last year or two, we've tried our best to keep those fees low, but it's become cost prohibitive. We are currently running in the red in that program. These fees would still be under the standard fee in the county. UCC has a program as well. This would be still under the current cost of that. We're trying to keep that barrier low, but would allow us to keep to be in the black this year, this fee change. This, and additionally, you'll notice that there are separate fees or different kind of fees, and those are for resident and non-resident or transfer students, and that's reflected in this as well. So I will, Chair Cotton, ask you to lead us through the process of a motion on this fee schedule for 23-24.
For discussion, we will need a motion and a second.
Motion to approve the 2023-2024 student fee schedule as proposed.
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, I do. It does not appear that there are any fees to play any sports in the Roseburg School District. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's
wonderful.
Yeah, it's correct. I will say this, playing sports is expensive. And
It is.
there are other fees parents incur in terms of like, I've got to buy cleats and that kind of thing. But for the majority of for all of our athletics and the majority of our activities, we've tried to eliminate the barrier access. You know, that there is a barrier. And particularly we hear this from parents that have multiple kids, like, wow, we've had parents say, kids have to choose the one they can do because we can't afford that. And I will just say props to the state and our businesses as part of the CAT tax. That's the fund that we use, and businesses have been generally really satisfied with this investment to help our community do this. I don't want to take credit for that. I mean, it's the board's decision, it's the district's decision to use the funds, but also want to tell businesses thank you for that the legislation and the business is willing to do that. So yeah, it's accurate.
Good comment. Any questions? Okay, let's call for the motion. All in favor? All right. Okay. Motion carries unanimous. Okay, we're moving right along. Okay, we're going to recess the board meeting, and we're going to convene to go into a board work session. And so, you know, we had the orientation meeting, what, early August or July? I can't even remember what it was. I thought it was good for me anyway. And I just wish we would have had a full day because we were moving right along. So there are some sections of the book. I don't know if you all brought your books or not. Didn't have to. But when Howard gets back,
Mhm.
we will start section 3.
Yeah.
So we'll just wait. It's here. So much.
Thank you, Chair Cotton. It's an honor and a pleasure to share some insight on the strategic plan. Before I go too far into discussing the plan, I will tell you personally, this developed while I was still in college. That's how long ago it's been. There are job descriptions. The most common one is called a task job description. You take a task and you list all of the details and the steps to get that task done. Let me give you an example. Janet's not here tonight, but let me use her as an example. On a timely basis, she gets inundated with a lot of material. She doesn't go through a process of scanning it, numbering it, working on all the details and putting it in your hands. I imagine that if she had to type down all the steps that she needed to do that, that would be task oriented. And I wouldn't want to read it because I know it's laborsome and cumbersome. There's also a result oriented job description. I could take Janet's job and say, in the area of communicating with the board, when she gives timely information to the board consistently for them to make meaningful decisions, she will have done a job well done. That's result oriented. Didn't discuss how she got it done, it's the results. Businesses started out a long time ago with probably the most motivating factor was laziness. How can I do something the easier way? Some of the inventions that you see today are results of mistakes. I'll share one with you that I'm familiar with. WD-40. NASA needed a lubricant to lubricate under different conditions. The first 39 samples failed. The 40th one passed. He called it WD-40. Henry Ford built a car to get rid of horses. Model A through S failed. Model T succeeded. That's why you see more Model Ts. You don't see Model A's and B's and C's. You see things that they will improve on, like I flew a jet in the Navy and it was a Model F, which means the first three had some substandard things. When they got to the F model, it was primo flying that jet. We got to the school board and we realized that we have an intangible product. We cannot go out and build more widgets to raise more money, like you could do when you're dealing with a product-oriented society. You can't go out and buy more hammers or more nails or more saws. We are in the process of educating our children, and we need to have a plan to get that done. What was confusing was we were all running around trying to get things done without any focus. So the board this past year, on the 4 different work sessions, we sat down and discussed what can we put in words that will guide and direct the entire organization. And each one of those work sessions was invigorating, it was motivating, it was not argumentative because we were all on the same page. We had a project we wanted to get done. And the strategic plan was that project. We looked at this whole thing. We had Jerry go through many variations, left and right, tweaking words here, tweaking statements here. And then we started getting input. And once we got that to a point where we all agreed that would be the North Star, that would be the guiding light, that would be the end tunnel that we're looking at. I would tell you personally, I started a church in Roseburg 34 years ago. And I wrote a strategic plan before we had our first church meeting. We, the members of Bethany, are here to provide a place of worship where you can get a closer, inspired word of God and have a relationship with your faith. Didn't say how we were going to do it, but that gave us focus. We were looking at what we were trying to get done. When Superintendent Garden came on board, he asked, do we have a strategic plan? I think maybe he may have thought he came to the wrong job because we had none. No strategic plan, nothing to guide the organization. And we are an organization. We are here committed to our employees. We're committed to our students. We're committed to our community to bring children from stage A to stage B in a meaningful manner. And we did this through the strategic plan. Once the plan was tweaked, that's my word, tweaked, we sat down and went over each one of the issues, what's important, what's not important, what can we do, how can we do it. It then became the board's goal to achieve that. And then we in turn made it the superintendent's goal to achieve that. Then we had the authority to tell him how to get it done. And he came back and said, let's do this. And we gave him that continuing authority. But without it, he had no way of knowing what was going on. We evaluate the superintendent on a regular basis, at least quarterly. We bring him in and says, let's talk about how you're doing and how you're doing it. Where do you need help? Where are you doing things well? This constant feedback is critical to the success of a meaningful organization. Because when you go long periods of time, you get way off guard. I'll use one more example and I'm gonna pass it over to the superintendent. When a ship leaves San Francisco on its way to Hawaii, it lays out a strategic plan of how it's going to get there. It considers how long it's going to take, how much fuel it's going to take, its course, its speed. But somewhere in the midst of that trip, if the seas move a different direction, if the wind blows a different direction, that ship will start drifting off course. And if you wait till you get to Hawaii, you'll miss it. So every so often you stop and says, where are we? Let's take a look at Celestial. They have GPS now, but in my day, they didn't have GPS. You have to take a fix with the stars, see where you are, see if you were on course, see if the winds were moving you, and you made some minor changes. Our strategic plan is a living document. We will take a look at it on a 3-year basis and see how we're doing and what we need to do better with it. With that being said, if you have any questions before I give it to Jared.
A good summary. What we're doing, what our attempts, our efforts.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I'll just spend a few minutes on this. Hopefully you're familiar with the strategic plan. It is a key document for us. And I guess a couple thoughts here. Our hope with this is really the success of our entire community hinges in a large part on the success of our schools. Most cultures agree, and I think our community agrees, that the most important asset we have are our children. And I appreciate, and I'll talk a little bit about what this means, but I appreciate the focus of our organization. It seems like many organizations sometimes get so busy with the tasks that they forget what they're trying to accomplish. And this has been an important document for us. Our children, they just have one 3rd grade year. They don't get another chance. They have a 4th grade year, but they just have I think often the commodity of time. And the intention of the document is really to ensure that we are using every resource we have to ensure that our kids receive the care they need, the support they need, the instruction they need to graduate and become successful in their future life, whatever that is. And what you'll notice in this document here, and they're not just words. We had 5 areas, and we felt like we've gotten to the spot where we graduated an area of improvement, and there are 4 areas that the board and the superintendent, our organization, has looked at and said, if we can do these things better, if we can do these things really well, we can achieve the middle of this document. There's a quote I like that we can't change what we're not willing to face. And each one of these items is a challenge we have to face. We have to have courageous, honest conversations with each other, our organization, our principals who are here, them with their staff with kids, us with parents, with our community, about how we can do this better. So I won't belabor this, but I'll just talk really briefly about each of these 4 areas. And each one of these is really critically important if we are going to become the organization we need to become for this community and for our kids. The first one is that we have to have, it's in instruction, and there's things we need to do in instruction to improve outcomes for kids. I'll talk about that slide in just a minute. You know, our teachers have to have the resources they need to be successful. They need the supports they need to be successful. Our principals need that. Our leaders need that. Our families need that. So that's a key area of how do we improve instruction for students. Now, I'll give you a little stat that's kind of remarkable. If we think about literacy in public schools right now in the country, on the average, so stay with me, it may seem boring to you, it's fascinating to me, but in an average 60-minute literacy block, kids spend 7 minutes reading. Think about that for a minute. You can't get better at reading unless you have an opportunity to read and have the right instruction to read. So there's those kind of items where that's not what we do here, but that's sometimes what you can get normed into. So how do you really improve instruction? Now, the board has approved the adoption of the 5D instructional framework. One of the first things I talked about when I came here, I had 2 main questions. What do we spend money on, and is it working? Are we getting a return on that investment? And number 2, do we all agree what good teaching is? And we didn't have an instructional framework. And without that, an organization, a school cannot move forward because you can't agree with what good instruction is. So we've made some really good efforts, and there's a lot of work to do in this area. Number 2, around leadership development, our leaders have to be exceptional leaders. And a lot of our leaders have to manage systems. We're the 4th, I think, largest employer in the county. We have about 800 employees, hundreds of millions of dollars in assets, thousands of students, and responsibility to tens of thousands of people. But we're really talking about how to develop leadership, not managers. How do you lead? And you can't lead what you don't understand. I know this firsthand as a leader. So how do we make sure we're working on leadership? It's a key part of our strategy as well. We've got to focus the next one on safe and inclusive environments. We need to know kids by their name and by their strengths and their needs, both. And everybody in our school organization, everybody from a parent to a teacher to a student, they need to feel safe and heard and respected. They also need to be safe. And so our investments around ensuring our buildings are safe places, that's not just in a classroom, but it is that. But it's also making sure we don't have some whack job shooter in the community has a mental derangement that's going to come in and be a threat to the community. So that fits in there. It's a key part of making sure our students can have the care they need. And then effective operations. You know, we have to make sure all of our departments, our entire organization is focused on this. We cannot have silos in our organization. I've talked to our leadership team about this often. We have to all lean into and have the courage to say, we've got to get better at these things. And so effectively, how we spend our money, how we plan, how we budget, how we support, we need to make sure it is data informed and we're moving that work forward. And that is what our strategic plan is. I'll give you just one other quick thing. And so there's a lot here, and it may seem to you to be a little bit vague. Like, how do you do that? I'm going to share a slide with you about some of the key priorities we have for this year. And this is in a form that will be totally connected to the strat plan, but this may be an easier way to show this. Bit of a follow-up from a meeting we had at the high school at the end of last year. Key priorities for us this year live in a couple of really important areas: literacy and mathematics outcomes for kids need to improve. If we think about an organization systemically, if you have redundancies, it doesn't matter what organization it is, and you're having to reteach or rethink and redo processes, you're not going to be in a high quality system that's coherent and systemic. And we need to make sure at an early age, students are proficient in reading and math. If they are not, there is a moral imperative with that about students getting behind. There's also a systemic imperative with that, which is that your teachers are sometimes having to reteach. I've talked about this before, but it's fascinating to me that in many of our kindergarten classrooms, we have kids further delta in reading than they have years of life on the earth. We have some kids that are decoding as 3-year-olds and some kids reading chapter books. And so sometimes for a teacher, you're like, wow, my kids are 5, but they're 6 years apart in reading. And the goal here is that what's tricky about this is my expectation is kids are going to have a year's worth of growth for years with the school. And so we need to make sure our kids are getting the core support that they need. And my expectation, we're not close to that yet, but we're going to get there, is that 80 to 85% of our students are proficient in literacy and math across all grade levels. I talked about this at the high school meeting of how far we are from that. I'm not scared of that. It's an opportunity we're going to hit head on. We have to have some courageous conversations of how to do that, how to organize for that. But that's my expectation. I do expect, and I think the board does too, a 90+% graduation rate on the 4-year rate. A lot's been said around the state in the last couple of years about graduation requirements and people lowering the bar. That is not the case here. If anything, we've increased the rigor in our coursework. It is demanding. And if you don't know, go to the high school or the middle school or even the elementary school and see. But relative to graduation, 2 things are going to happen. As we have a more coherent system of proficiency early, graduation, remember, is not a high school project. It's not a high school responsibility. That's a system responsibility. And I fully know we've been there before. We had a 90% graduation rate right before COVID. As we take a look at 9th graders on track, our middle school, our elementaries and those supports, that's an expectation that I have. And I think that we all share and a responsibility to all share. Safety and security is another key item. This is an item that I wake up every morning and go to bed every night worrying about. Are our kids safe in our schools? We have projects the board's outlined for us, and that's my expectation. These get done on time, on budget, and to the highest quality. And those are key priority items for us this year. So going back to the strategic plan, this is how it's the board. So essentially the board says these are important. This comes to your superintendent, who's your CEO, and I turn the organization toward operating under this framework. So I think it's important for you to understand it's the Board of Education, the directors who direct the work. This is your playbook, essentially. This is what the work we're trying to accomplish for you is. It's what I want to be held accountable for and expect to be. It's what I hold our staff accountable for and expect to be. And I believe this strategic plan does represent our best chance to make sure all of our students are successful in our schools.
I would like to add that a school district to the north of us, 4J, which includes Sheldon, North Eugene, South Eugene, Churchill, heard that we did a strategic plan. They called us to see how we did it. We've gotten calls from the East Coast, from the South to Roseburg saying, how did you guys, folks, people, get this done? That's a kudos to us as a board, and I'm glad to be part of it.
So this is important. So this is our North Star of the board, yours, but this belongs to the community.
Mhm.
So this logo, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do with this logo that's got full of so much information in it?
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think we've commented, it's ironic that it's not somewhere in this room of a boardroom.
There's nowhere except.
And I know our communications director, Chelsea Duncan, myself, a few other people have talked about making sure this is present and visible in our schools and our community. And it should, we've laid out a plan to make sure that both in my communication to the board and the last board bulletin and in our communication with the community and parents, this becomes part of our discussion and conversation around this strategic plan with them.
So there'll be something, will this logo be posted somewhere in the schools?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, also, I was wondering if there's a way of keeping it posted, not just in certain places, but even incorporating it somehow into our logo. So that just with the different paperwork that we receive throughout the school district, you know, they continually see that, it's continually before their eyes as a reminder. I don't know if that's feasible or not, but it
She
could
said right
also
next
be,
to you.
could also be a way
Yeah.
of reinforcing that.
Yeah.
Great recommendation.
For the community. You were talking about we're getting community support for sports. For uniforms, and they support our athletics. But, you know, those same businesses, maybe we could make sure that they also get what we're trying to do educationally. They know we're, you know, we want all of our kids to really be great in their athletic and, you know, ventures, but you know, those same people maybe would be equally interested in however they can supporting our educational.
Great point. Yeah, thank you.
I wasn't gonna say anything, but after Ann said something, something sprang to mind. I mean, a lot of athletic teams do a patch. And you don't have to put all the literature in it. But if you had a symbolic patch on the uniforms alluding to, we're proud that our school district graduates our athletes, or something to that effect, I mean, that'd be pretty cool to advertise.
Great suggestion.
Just an idea.
So thank you for the comment. So I'm gonna, first of all, not putting anybody on the spot. When you got this book, did all of you read chapter 4? If you didn't, that's fine, but I want to go over a couple things in chapter 4 on boardmanship. Just a reminder. And I know that Andrea and Steve, you're going to OSB summer conference. That's this week, right? Are you going with them? Oh, boy. Good.
Take
I
off
mean,
tomorrow night. Yeah.
Okay. That will be a benefit for you. So some of this stuff they'll cover also, but a couple things that reading through this that I thought was important just to remind us and maybe remind ourselves again later on in the year is there is a code of conduct for school board members in under chapter 4 that if you haven't read that, you do need to read that. If you would, please. And just a couple of them, and we've not had any issues with this, but just a reminder. We need to respect each other. All of us will have or could have different opinions. And we just need to respect that. When we serve on the board, we have to remember serving on the board isn't about it's about we as a team. And that's kind of, if you look at the North Star, we're not going to get anything accomplished if we don't work together as a team. I will tell you, over my 30 years on the board, there have been votes. You know, they say once a vote has been taken, and if it doesn't fall on your side where you wanted it to fall, you kind of move on. Well, that's kind of difficult at times. So a few years ago, we closed an elementary school, and I'm still upset about that. I don't think you should ever close an elementary school. I think it tears the heart out of that little community. But they finally said, you have to get over it, Rod. Well, I did kind of, but so votes like that will come up. You just have to be respectful to one another. But that doesn't mean you don't have, you still give us your opinion, each other's opinion. We need to know that. And I don't think that's going to be an issue with this board. So that's good. Make decisions only after you have the facts. You know, in another few meetings, a couple more, 2 or 3 more meetings, you're going to know as a board, which of our fellow board members didn't take the time to read the information prior to a meeting. And that's very disrespectful to the folks that put that information together. The administration staff is working really diligently to try to get this information out to us on Fridays. And I think that will happen. So that will give us a weekend and a few more days for questions. The one thing about that, what I wanted to bring up, because I had this issue when I was a newer board member. We have to remember that Jared is our employee. He works for us. And the other administrators report to Jared. And then all the teachers and all that, they report to their administrator building. It's not, we don't intermix. We don't get in there and try to run the schools. That's not our job. Our job is not to run the day-to-day operations of the school. Can you imagine? It would be a disaster. And because we're not the experts. So we hold him accountable. And so, and he's very open. He's very accessible to all board members. I think what's really important, if you want to, my suggestion, if you want to meet with any of the administrators, pick up the phone and make a time to meet with them. Because I have no idea what they're doing during the day on some days. We don't know if they're dealing with a fire or they're dealing with a student, dealing with a parent, or we're shorthanded and they're in a classroom having to teach, or they have meetings. We need to be just really cognizant of their time also. And he will, if you want to call him at 9 o'clock in the evening, he'll pick up his phone. I will never do that. But so just kind of, you know, think about when you're wanting to meet with him, because it gives him time to prepare. And if you want to go into the schools, and I would really encourage that. The best way to do is go through the superintendent, and then he will make that time to go to school, because you want to make it worth your time to go. It's just not good to show up at a building and walk in. It shouldn't work that way. So this won't be an issue with this board, but other boards around the county, you can kind of see have had some issues. I don't want us to get to that point. I want us to be able to feel really comfortable if we want to go to whatever elementary school, but we want to make it worth our while and their while too. They have a lot of great things go on in our schools, and they want to be able to show that.
So, we should first go to Jared or not the principal. And then we'll.
I can help arrange that. Yeah.
Yeah. And doesn't mean he's going to be at the school. He'll help arrange it. And it might be, hey, I want to go to Eastwood, but I'll go with another board member. And he might say, oh, Ann wants to go. Maybe you two can go together.
And we'll have, building the subcommittees are going to start up. We'll
Yeah.
talk about that at the end of the day. So sometimes there's building the sites going to see something. We have to make sure we're not in the quorum. That's a tricky thing. And Janet is the board secretary, my executive assistant. You can start there as well. If you get to Stephanie or Janet, they can get a hold of me as well. But I'm normally there.
So it's a good question. So the school board establishes policies that govern recruiting, hiring, employment, supervision, training, evaluation, and dismissals of employees. The board is directly responsible for hiring of the superintendent. The superintendent, as the board's chief executive officer, is responsible for hiring and supervising district employees. The board does not directly supervise district employees and should be very careful to act through the superintendent in personnel matters. So I would highly suggest that you don't call up David Vickery. I mean, he's the new guy, probably get things past him, I don't know. And suggest that, I don't really like I don't like whoever, doesn't matter. And what are we gonna do about it? You can't do that. We'll get ourselves in big hot water. Big hot water. So when it comes to personnel, the right time to, for example, when you see recommended hires. Well, there's a lot of effort that went through doing background checks on hiring of an employee, a teacher, whatever. The time to, if you have a concern, is call Jared, and maybe eventually when we get a HR director, that would be okay. And share your concerns. And if you're really to the point where you just don't agree with a specific hire, you can vote no on the consent agenda. And I've done that before. I just didn't feel comfortable with a hire. So I would be careful about that.
Right, so that would be the appropriate action then is when we approve or vote to approve the consent agenda.
If there's something on there, even if it doesn't, if it's other than anything in the consent agenda that you don't agree with, I would make it known, I'm going to vote no. And this is why you have to be careful with personnel items. You can't throw names out, Hopefully you've had a chance to talk to Jared, and then you vote no. That's your time to show your displeasure. We're not a board that we like 7-0 votes. But we're individual board members when it comes to voting. So I'm just telling you, that's worked for me over all these years.
Can you abstain from voting, say you're not sure about the fact,
Yes,
and you're not sure whether you want to vote, can you say abstain?
yes.
You don't have to say no.
No, you don't have to say no. You can
But
abstain.
it should be noted that an abstain is a no vote.
Yeah,
Oh, it isn't.
well, it is that way, yeah. But
Oh.
I've abstained over the years. I don't know if Howard has. Doesn't matter, but sometimes it's good when we have discussion. To say I'm going to abstain and this is why. Now, in some board meetings, and you will hear them say after the vote, they'll say, do you want to explain your no vote? Heck no. So then, I've already explained it. So that, to me, that's kind of a weird way of, I think the city does that. Do you want to explain your no vote? No, I've already explained it. So abstain is considered a no vote. But you can just say I'm going to abstain from voting because I don't understand all this, or I don't have enough information.
I just
And
mention one thing
Yeah.
just real quick, if I could. I think, yes, for sure, what Director Chair Cotton's saying. I would be cautious about too much explanation that could violate labor. law.
Yeah.
And so is it, relative to their Oregon labor law is complex. And there's federal civil rights issues and protected classes and those kind of things. So if you had, if the directors had concerns, in full disclosure, you could come to me with a concern about an employee I couldn't talk to you about if it's protected. And I would just be cautious relative to employment in a public meeting. If it's like, even if it's the perception that, it could be a protected class, we would want to make sure the district doesn't incur both a social liability or a monetary liability because of that. So just, I think caution in that is.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good comment. Like I said, the best way to do, if you have a concern, is just talk to Jared. Okay, and then finally, I want to talk about executive sessions. Because I want to make sure everybody understands this. Executive sessions are not open to the public. A board may call a special executive session or may go into a executive session during a regular, special, or emergency meeting to discuss subjects. And then it gives ORSs. Executive sessions are limited to topics listed in the statute, which include dealing with employee discipline, dismissals and hiring, student records exempt from public inspection, negotiations, litigation, real estate, school safety matters, student expulsions, or student medical records. A board, here's the important thing, we can't make a decision in executive meeting. We have to come out and make do our vote. And we don't always have a vote after an executive session. Now, reporters may attend. We cannot exclude them from executive sessions, except there are 4 exceptions. So the media can come in unless you call an ORS that includes these 4 exceptions. And they are labor negotiations are being discussed, an expulsion hearing for a student. The student's medical records, including educational program, are being discussed. And if the reporter or the reporter's media organization is involved in litigation. Some board members encounter problems because they believe reporters are prohibited from reporting all conversations that take place in executive session. Here we go. That is not true. Reporters are allowed to report discussion of topics not exempted by executive session. Okay. So, and in executive session, we must stay on the topic based on the ORS. If we say we're going in to discuss Jared's contract or whatever, we can't get in there and turn around and say, you know, they're serving green peas instead of whatever at this school. You can't do that. You have to stick to the topic at hand and the ORS. Always. Then it's clean. So I think that's what I wanted to cover because I didn't get to finish that at our orientation, but I would encourage that you read section 4. And I think you two, they're going to go over this again. And this has been helpful for me to remind myself. We just want to run clean meetings. There's enough stuff that's going on that we don't want to create headlines, bad news print, and we want our staff to be able to do their job. And we want them to be happy that we're showing up at their schools and that they've got time to prepare, and we're coming. And I know we're going to do a lot more of that this year. So, okay, any questions? Nope. Okay.
I'll make just one comment real quick if I can, and that is our one change we've made this year is that in addition to you visiting schools, our principals will be presenting to the board around the strategic plan and around really the state report card, which has literacy and math measures, some attendance things, and what they're doing in their buildings to move that work forward. So some of that work's going to come to you this year. At every board business meeting, and then I think a work session in January, February to fit everyone in. Those will be reports that will start. In fact, I think Ben Bentia is going to be our first, your first report from Fremont Middle School. It's a little bit awkward because the state report cards aren't out until about mid-October, but you'll start. Fremont's going to kick us off. It'll be a next meeting, so they'll be coming to give you some information around what they're doing in their specific schools to move the work of the board and the district forward in these key areas.
I think that is such a good move because on our strategic plan, it talks about data driven and data informed. And I had a question mark there, what data, how are we, what are we getting? But a report from you guys, and not exactly numbers, but what are you doing there that's moving us forward in these ways for their success? That would be awesome to hear from each school principal.
And I'm gonna, are we getting new microphones?
That's a budget item we can discuss in executive session.
I'll buy my own.
I just got a bid and I was like, what?
Oh, a lot expensive?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess not.
Not today.
Okay. We're gonna move on, but I just also wanted to let folks know that we're working on when we visit schools to maybe come like at 4:45, start a tour. And then we have a little snack and then we go to the meeting. We're gonna be there. I always enjoyed that, and I think you would enjoy that. And our subcommittees are gonna really be flying this year and like building and sites. I think Ms. Emerson wants to be at every site this school year for our building and sites meetings. So those, we'll go to your sites and we'll take a tour of the buildings, things that need to get done. You can show the board. So we're gonna be a lot more. You're gonna see a lot more of us. That's okay. We're not the enemy. So, all righty, Jared.
Okay, I have a short,
Sorry.
no worries. I have a short update for the board. So as you know, I've talked about the softball field being built. That's one of our projects for building the sites to take a look at. If you have not been behind Finley Field, quite a bit of work has happened back there. I've given the board some updates. Everything from zoning, permitting, and community work on that, but there's some good progress happening back there, and we're excited that, and thanks to primarily to Cheryl and her work to get us on track and make sure we're on track. See, it would have been, what year did the Finley Field with the turf go in? Was it 2000? The replacement turf, 17 or 18, maybe somewhere in there. Okay, before I arrived. So I did want to let you know, we've heard from some advocates around, naming fields and things, and this has gone through our one of our subcommittees last year that Director Shirtcliffe chaired. But we are going to move forward with a plan to we're going to exercise we have a policy around corporate advertising, and we are going to exercise that policy to essentially have a sponsor our sports complex. Sports complex would be both Finley Field and RHS Field, as well as the new softball complex. I believe the valuation is pretty significant there. We do have a comp. I've shared some comps in this room before. The most proximate comp would be Legion Field with Champion Car Wash. That's $25,000 a year. We have a press release ready to go out after this board meeting, after the discussion of the board, and make sure that board is okay with that. I would like to move forward on the naming rights for a major sponsor for the sports complex. There are some examples. Medford comes to mind with US Cellular. There's a new project in Medford, which is an aquatic type center that Rogue Community Credit Union is a major sponsor for. And I think the important thing to highlight is that we want to make sure we have longevity of these facilities. And turf fields have a life. It's about 10 to 13 years, depending on use. The softball turf is likely going to be in the $600,000 to $700,000 range for installation. That's about what we'll probably see with potentially more with eventual returf of Finley Field. And I'm hopeful to secure a partnership with an organization that would sponsor that and be able to take care of a significant portion of the re-turfing that will need to happen down the line for our students. I will be, with the board's approval, be working with potential sponsors over the next couple of months. And we'll bring a list of potential sponsors to the board for a public discussion with the board and moving forward. But it's our We'll just speak personally, it's my expectation or my hope, if you will, that we can, I think there's a huge value of this to an organization, to have a sports complex named after the organization. I do think it provides an opportunity, and particularly in context of the failure of the last three bonds that would have done some capital type improvements. We need to be innovative in the way we think about the longevity of our investments. And I think this is a way that could help significantly to further ensure we have a fund to pay for future replacements of these two key assets in our community. So happy to host any questions the board might have. I guess there's passive consent in this approval unless there's disapproval, then we'll go back to kind of phase 1 or 2 on this. But if the board is in favor of moving forward, this is not really an action, it's more of a discussion item tonight, then I'll get started immediately on working on a process to start talking to other CEOs and business owners and members of our community about this potential
I think
opportunity.
it's a great idea. I do, I think it's good. Also kind of garners community, looking within our community, and kudos to those who are supporting our kids, in athletics. So I think it's a good idea. It's good thinking ahead, how we're going to fund these fields. I think it's very good forward thinking. Good job.
And are we still considering the renaming or naming after someone? So this would take the place of that, or
What?
do we know yet on that?
I don't know that we know. I think I think we have I feel a responsibility to make sure that we can keep our field working. And so, if a group, had a proposition for the board that involved the name of a person, they could certainly come forward with a kind of that proposition to the board, or, but I think our long-term and short-term trajectory has to be to ensure that as we invest in things, there is a plan for long-term with that. And I will just tell you one thing. I did speak to someone who's been involved in this. He's in Oregon and was a key to find some sponsorships. And what he said is, it really is down to the conversation about the potential of this, what it means for advertising and marketing. And he said, oftentimes what it comes down to is there's just one of these and people want to be that person. And I think we have a lot of really, really great relationships and champions in of our students and our kids and our community. And I think this will be something that people will be very interested in. And so we'll look to who can do that. Yeah.
We need to go that direction.
Yeah.
I did want to say, I've had limited involvement with the previous, naming of a person as opposed to selling the rights. I'm a big proponent in the community's voice. In that arena, the community's voice seemed very divided, but the one thing that the community's voice was unified on was 2 times in a row saying, I don't want a bond. I don't want to pay taxes. I don't want to pay more tax. I can't pay more taxes. Inflation has put me in a bad situation. So, I think this is a fantastic idea to displace something that we're trying to ask of the community that they're not willing to give. It's a very forward-thinking idea. And if you need a motion, I'll put it.
So we don't need to vote, but kind of a consensus to allow him just kind of a nod. Okay, move forward.
Okay, thank you.
So we're gonna move into, at your place was a packet that has the subcommittee assignments. This was a lot of work. And not everybody got what they wanted, and I apologize. But if there is an issue, I know Andrea had wanted to know, she was on several committees. but some of these committees may meet just once a year. So we'll make it work. But if you have an issue with this, that you like flopped around or anything, just shoot me an email or Janet. And we can work through it and get it fixed, because we want to get these cemented at the end of the week if possible. So that we can, the chairmans can start getting things scheduled. And if there's something, if they're on a committee that you just don't want to be on, we can fix that. Just shoot Janet or I an email. Okay, and then I wanted briefly, it's not on here, the mentor program will start September. And Andrea, you're gonna be the first block. And it'll be through January. And we'll get a schedule out to you. Steve, yours will be February through June. I think that, what's that, 5 months each? We'll get a schedule out to you where the chair and the vice chair meet with the superintendent on getting the agenda set up, and then a recap meeting. Or whenever, if we have another meeting, we would like for you to be at those meetings, so you can kind of see how it works. And then so next school year, we'll have folks that can step up and work behind, I think, Howard. Because I've told you that I just wanted to be in a leadership role just this year. In the next 3 years, so there's some turnover. So will that work for you? And will that work for you? Okay, cool. Looking forward to it. I think it's gonna be a instead of two of us getting in trouble, there'll be 3 of us getting in trouble. Okay, so we have gone through the agenda. And I'm going to adjourn the meeting, and we'll see everybody at the next school board meeting, which is August 23rd. All righty, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.